Hey everybody, Gail Rosenblum here, producer of Milkweed. Thank you again for your continued support of our very exciting film project. Today we have something a little unusual to discuss. This is the concept of the scapegoat, and it is a word that plays a big role in the Jewish holidays. In the Bible, during the Jewish holidays, we learned that there was a literal scapegoat who took all our sins and wandered into the desert with them and took them away from us forever. But obviously that's not the way it works in contemporary times. And so I turned to Rabbi Alexander Davis to give us a little bit of insight into the term. And he had some wonderful reflective things to say about the scapegoat. So I hope you enjoy our conversation.
I understand a scapegoat to be when an innocent person is blamed for someone else's wrongdoing. It's when we blame someone else rather than taking responsibility ourselves. So we shift the weight of our flaws to someone else. I think that the idea is, just inherent in human nature because who of us wants to look at our flaws, kind of look at ourselves in the mirror and say, I screwed up. It's much easier to pass the buck and saying, not my fault, that
Yeah.
he did it, right? It goes all the way back to Adam and Eve, the very first human beings, when he says, she made me eat the apple, not my fault. First of all, just to sort of set the context, for us, the entire thing may seem quite foreign because we don't do sacrifice. We don't know from sacrifice. But in biblical times, that was the way you communicated to God. So whether you were offering praise or thanksgiving or asking for forgiveness, you communicated through sacrifice. Korban in Hebrew, sacrifice is about drawing closer to God. In this case, repairing a relationship. It was I think in 1530, in a translation of the Hebrew Bible by William Tyndale, that the term was coined. First, it was a scapegoat, and then it was later shortened to scapegoat. But it really worked the opposite of how we understand it today. It was originally exactly the opposite of how we consider it today. In other words, when we say when someone's scapegoating, they're casting blame on someone else. They're getting rid of their sin by placing it, on someone else's shoulders. But in biblical times, the way the scapegoat work is the high priest would take responsibility for his faults, for his shortcomings, and those of his house and those of the entire people. So it wasn't a way of casting the blame on someone else. He was dafka accepting the blame. It's a really big question, and I'm not sure I have all or any of the answers, but I would say that just by human nature, it's much easier to find fault with someone else than with oneself. And so if you're poor, you blame the rich, and if you're rich, you blame the poor, and if you're on the right, you blame the left, and if you're on the left, you blame the right. We're always looking for the other person to blame and not to sit with that sense of guilt that maybe we've come up short. And historically, the Jewish people have set themselves aside. They have been set aside, but also set ourselves aside. And so, in that sense, we were kind of an easy target, really, from all sides. And, in the history of anti Semitism, we have been persecuted from all sides, really. So, that said, we think about certainly in the modern context, the Shoah, the Holocaust. But remember that kind of scapegoating of the Jews by Hitler and the Germans, it really could only exist because there already was a long history of persecuting Jews. I think that the opposite of scapegoat in Hebrew would be tshuva, the whole process of accepting responsibility, admitting one's faults, and working to repair them and to set a new course. So if scapegoating is about saying, I didn't do it, not my fault, then the opposite is saying, I did this. I accept responsibility and I'm determined to change. It's about owning one's sins. The other piece that's important is that When we blame someone else, when we scapegoat them, then in a sense, we remain a victim.
Mm.
To accept responsibility, however, is to see yourself as having agency. I have the ability to transform my life and therefore the world.